So it is a truly beautiful, cool winter's day here in Southeast Texas and Crosby, Texas. It is going to get cold, at least cold for us. Today it's actually in the 50s, but at the end of the week it's going to drop down in the 20s at night, which for us is pretty much snowpocalypse 2021. Whenever winter rolls around, I get in the mood for doing things like soups and other things that are kind of stick to your ribs. And even though it's somewhat carbon friendly, which I'm trying to be good on carbs lately, I decided to make myself probably a version of one of my favorite soups, and that is a sausage and potato soup. Now, typically I do this with sage sausage, and instead I decided I've got some Italian sausage hanging out in the fridge, both loose and link. I decided to go ahead and smoke up some link sausage. So I've got just over 2 pounds of mild Italian sausage that I'm going to be smoking. I wish it was hot, but you know, it is what it is. And I've got the Blaz'n firing up right now. Just hit the start button with a lumberjack MHC, which is maple, hickory, and cherry. And I'm going to let that roll at 225 for just about 2 hours. And that smoke flavor is not going to fully cook everything in there, but what it's going to do is it's going to provide the basis for a pretty hearty soup. I'm going to use some small Yukon potatoes, quarter them, have some chicken stock, some heavy cream, and the smoke flavor on the sausage. It's really going to par cook it. It'll then be finished off and let the flavors marry inside the soup itself. So even though this isn't all in the smoker, I mean, this is a kind of a little barbecue mini channel I'm getting ready. It is smoked meats, and it is something that I think inspires some flavors that are consistent with what most people who enjoy barbecuing and grilling enjoy. So we'll be back here in 2 hours to take the sausage off the grill. Once it's off the grill, I'll let it cool, then I'll dice it up, put it in that sausage. I'll really do rounds instead of diced. But I'll go through the entire process, and hopefully this is something you want to try making. Again, this is a rustic Italian soup with Italian sausage as opposed to my typical sage sausage. Down the road, I may experiment with making some loose sage sausage on my own from pork butt, and doing it the way that I've always done it. This is a new recipe for me. I've never tried it before, so we'll see how things go. So wrapping up the smoke in terms of some Italian sausage on a increasingly beautiful Texas winter day. Down here for the Gulf Coast, again, it's nice and cool, but for most people in the country, this would be, I don't know, late spring. Very, very nice day to be out on the barbecue on the back porch. So let's see how it looks after 2 hours. Those are looking good. So in terms of trying to block out a bit of the sunlight for you guys, you can see that there's some fat rendering. The aroma is going to be, I can smell the sausage obviously because of the fats that are dripping down and so on. This is where I want it to be. I don't want to over smoke it, and I also don't want it all the way cooked because it will of course be simmering in some soup a little bit later to help impart some flavor. So this is a go. A very simple smoke today, nothing prepped except for this actual sausage, putting it on the rack, getting it smoked up. The real thing will be obviously getting it prepared for the soup. The soup itself, again, not a smoked dish. It's not one of the things I'd want to bring out here to the smoker. It's not like a chili or something, but this is good for what ails you when the weather's getting cooler. So we'll take this inside. So with the sausage smoked, now it's time to start building our soup. This is a rustic soup, or at least that's what I'm envisioning. Using some small potatoes, and then I've quartered. Gonna do some chicken stock, and gonna let this bring up over a medium simmer for a bit, for about 15 to 20 minutes. And just using some Kitchen Basics chicken stock, I may augment this with a bit of water and some chicken base if I don't feel that it's enough. What I want to do is get these potatoes fork tender, and I've used 3 pounds of these potatoes, and I try to go usually for a 1-to-1 ratio between the sausage and the potatoes. I think that turns out well. I like a very meaty soup. In terms of the potatoes, again, don't want to get this to a rolling boil or anything else. I just want to get these fork tender and let these go for a bit. I do like mine with a bit of bite, at least in the early days, because again, with the reheating and everything else, it's going to soften these things up a little bit. I've already rinsed these and let them soak for about 20 minutes to just get off a little bit of residual starch. I do want to add just a bit of water so these have got some room to simmer. Spices, cream, all these other things will go in once these things are fork tender. The stock itself, of course, is going to be kept in with everything else as part of the base for the stock, as part of the, you know, it's building layers of flavor, hopefully. This, obviously, the stock itself is not a no salt stock. It's decent stuff, kitchen basics. I've made my own before. Frankly, half the time I don't have the time. So we'll let this go for a bit. Meanwhile, while this is going on, I'll finish getting all the sausage diced up from the smoker, and we'll get back to building the soup once these have simmered for about 20 minutes. So I've already got most of the sausage prep done. You can see that in terms of the sausage itself that went on the smoker, it turned out looking really pretty. You get a little bit of a smoke ring on there. Fat's rendered out. Skin is still, you know, it's not tough, but it's definitely toothsome, I think is a nice way to put it. Because I only had 2 pounds of the mild sausage, I'm going to augment this with a pound of cooked Italian sausage, and it's already been, you know, it's flavorful. It's got the HEB brand is what I'm using currently. As far as these, I actually did 2 different cuts, and my reasoning is I like a little bit of difference and maybe some textural differences. I've got some half moons and I've got some quad, well, silver dollars worth. I did half and half. So 5 links of the sausage were cut into the half moons. And then 5 links, of course, are being cut into the rounds. As far as, you know, why didn't I cut it on a bias? I don't want the pieces to be too big. I've got a big old mouth. So for me, the rounds will be fine. I may share some of this. And if that's the case, then I've got a 9-year-old goddaughter who may appreciate a smaller bite. So we'll see how it goes. But again, I've got the meats done, got the potatoes over there simmering away, and once all of that is done, we will get these things loaded up and start building the soup itself. I've got these where they're simmered. They're a perfect fork tender. I typically like to put in most of my liquids first. In this case, I'm going to go with a mix of heavy cream. This right here is a pint. And my reason for not just doing all heavy cream is I find that the mouthfeel gets a little weird. I'm weird about textures. For example, certain things just, they squeak on my teeth. I know that sounds strange. That's why in terms of onions, I'm very particular in terms of how they're cooked and everything else. With regard to the liquid, again, that chicken stock was in there. It was a full box of kitchen basics. At this point, I'm going to be adding in a few different things. I do want to put my sausage in there, but before I do that, I think I'm going to go ahead and put in this butter and let that break down. That's just, you know, getting a tablespoon of butter. I do have that loose breakfast sausage that I talked about before, and that's going to go in now. And I'll get that a stir to incorporate. And then we'll go for the big guns, which is the smoked sausage. And again, this is a lot of meat. I tend to like, mine is almost more of a stew rather than a soup. You know, members of my family, when I've made this for them, they go, you need more potatoes. Nah, yeah, it's a good balance, I think, a 1-to-1. If you do prefer a more traditional flavor, you can add a little bit of cream and a little bit of chicken stock to thin it down just a wee bit. And you can also, of course, reduce the amount of sausage or increase the amount of potatoes and kind of play with it from there. This is typically a half batch. You notice that I actually did change over to a larger vessel. I didn't want to squeeze the Dutch oven. And I think this is the perfect size for what I'm creating. Again, it almost looks more like some sort of a strange crawfish boil. I am going to be thinning this out with, I'll probably get some chicken base and a little bit more of that water and give myself a bit more liquid to work with. But again, at this point, I do want to bring the heat up just a bit, and I want to get it to a simmer. Now we need to incorporate the rest of the ingredients. So here is probably, it's a heaping tablespoon of freshly cracked pepper. I'm using Tilla cherry peppercorns. As far as salt, there's salt in the butter, there's salt in the sausage, but I do like to add an additional tablespoon of salt. About a teaspoon of celery salt, and I just think it provides a nice round flavor. I do have some onions. Again, these are dehydrated because I didn't have an onion with me, but what I'm going to do is allow these, again, these will pick up some of the moisture and part some of the flavor. Sometimes I boil it, or not boil it, sometimes I simmer it with the potatoes. In this case, I was preparing to dice up an onion and didn't have it with me. I was going to saute it and make it all nice and pretty and everything else. Then we're going to go ahead and dump in kind of just a spice blend. I've got 2 tablespoons of Aleppo peppers. It's not super hot. It just provides a nice round flavor. A little bit of onion powder to round out the dehydrated. Got some oregano. This is actually about 2 tablespoons, and then 2 teaspoons, and about a tablespoon of thyme. And we'll get these incorporated. And the smells of this, especially in terms of those herbs, once they hit this and they start really just kind of releasing some of those oils, even in a dried state, the aroma is amazing. And then some greenery. You know, you could add kale to this. You could add spinach to this. I know that zuppa toscana, I think, at Olive Garden. Of course, it's not just Olive Garden. It's a real soup. But I like parsley in this, and this is a slightly dried parsley. They're a little over a quarter cup. And I do think I want to add just a bit of half and half in here. Again, half and half, you know, versus the heavy cream. To me, I find that the balance between the two, not going all in one direction, provides both body and mouthfeel. The starch from the potatoes that leached out into that chicken broth will help thicken up the sauce a bit. So again, I don't want it where it's like a chowder or a chili, but that's usually where it ends up after a couple days. I typically do on the second day or so, third day of eating this stuff, I do try to thin it out with just a little bit of warm chicken stock while I'm reheating. But we're going to let this go for a bit. I am going to add some garlic. I've got to mince that up. I actually forgot to do that. I think that this benefits, again, there's an Italian kind of subcurrent there. It's very much a rustic stew. And adding several cloves of garlic and then mashing it with a little bit of kosher salt so I get a paste. That way you're not biting into raw garlic at any point, but you're definitely getting a very profound garlic flavor. And then once it comes up to a simmer, this is some white balsamic vinegar. I'm going to add that towards the end because I think it brightens everything up, helps cut through some of the richness. And if this were the version of sage sausage soup I use, I got the idea. It's called Aunt JoJo's Politically Incorrect Soup. It was on a Food Network thing years ago. And they added some vanilla, good vanilla. And it's not much, but for whatever reason, it plays really well with the soup. Now, since this is more of an Italian profile, kind of like a farmhouse soup, not going to add the vanilla this time. But down the road, I may end up making another video that does include the sage sausage and that vanilla flavoring. They're very similar. I typically use a cubed potato as using new potatoes with this. This is not necessarily a pantry soup, but it's definitely some things that I had and I wanted to play around with. So pretty straightforward. I will note also before I cut out is that those potatoes, I didn't peel them. Again, part of it's there's some nutrients in there, but two, there's no need to. Also, they're tiny potatoes. I would need tiny hands or tiny people to come do it for me. I'll probably be adding a little bit of crystal hot sauce, my hot sauce of choice for most table preps, just to see where the spice level's at. Again, there's not that much Aleppo pepper in there, and again, it doesn't bring heat to the table. It brings flavor to the table. This isn't meant to be a super spicy soup, but for those of you who are chili heads, I think adding a couple of drops or a couple of shakes or, you know, damn half gallon to your bowl once it's done. Some oyster crackers just to give it a little bit of textural variance. And this is an incredible cold weather soup. So we'll be back once those things have had a chance to marry, once I've added the garlic and once it thickens up just a little bit after simmering for a bit, and see what the finished product looks like. So we'll be back in a bit. So I've added the balsamic, I've added the garlic, and it's been up to heat for a bit. I backed it back down. I think you can see that it's thickening up nicely. I don't want it too thick, but I think that right now it's a good consistency. Again, typically I will do this with a few oyster crackers, sometimes garlic bread. I think garlic bread, especially with the Italian preparation, would be pretty phenomenal. It's allowed the sausage to pick up some of those flavors. You can see I did add a bit more Aleppo pepper just because I like the flavor profile. And I'll show you what it looks like plated up with a small bowl. I'm going to let it reduce down just a bit more. But again, the flavors are already going to be amazing. The smell of it alone makes me happy. I never tried this before. Again, this is going to have I don't want to say a true Italian style because I took a lot of liberties, but it's definitely going to be more reminiscent of what one would expect if you went to an Italian restaurant. Again, rustic style. The potatoes themselves held up pretty nicely. Let's see how it tastes. I am curious. Again, the smoked sausage component is something that's unique for me. Typically, I will saute up the sausage, but let's see how this tastes. Oh yeah. I'm glad I didn't add more oregano. I originally was going to make it equal with the thyme. I think the flavor profile is nice. A little bit of crunch from those dehydrated onions that combined in here, but this honestly doesn't need crackers. It's almost as if I added cheese to it. I think the cream, that vinegar in the background, it's just got such a very smooth flavor profile. It cuts through some of the richness of the heavy cream. This is something I'll probably make on occasion. The sage sausage is my go-to, but this may be right up there with it. Of course, letting other people who've tasted both of them, let them decide. I like to cook for other people. Kind of makes me happy. It's also, for me, therapeutic. It's kind of like a science experiment. And with everyone cooped up for the past year, I've been investing in a lot of time on just kind of building a new skill set, learning to edit videos, and hopefully along the way eat something that tastes pretty damn good. So I consider this a win. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, super simple to make. Anyone with a smoker can make this. The smoke flavor does come through with the sausage, but it's not overpowering. And that was my concern. I might have typically run the sausage maybe another 45 minutes to pick up more smoke, or started at a lower phase and built it up slowly. But I didn't want it to be in competition with everything. It's a win. So again, you guys take care. This is Super Bowl Sunday for this year, since I am not emotionally invested in either the Bucks or the Chiefs, and I think that Brady is a cheating cheater. I will switch my allegiance over to the team formerly known as the Dallas Texans for the Kansas City Chiefs, and wish all of you guys a happy and safe Super Bowl Sunday.